Hello Mayhem Makers, I am Mindy with Quilting Mayhem and welcome to week 1 of the Summer Samplers. So we're going to start out right out the gate with what I called the darting bird block. I'm sure it has other names to it, but I thought that was kind of fun. It's a fairly simple block. We're going to make what we would call a 4-patch, and then we're going to make some flying geese. So the 4-patch really is just laying 4 squares out in the layout that is shown for the block, and then sewing them together. So fairly simple, making sure you're placing your correct fabrics. So, and you can change up your fabrics. You don't have to follow the color layout I have. So a red and orange right sides together. We're always using 1/4 inch seams. Sew that 1/4 inch, press it, all that kind of stuff. And then I have a yellow and one of the orange ones together. We'll press it, all that kind of stuff. So I'll do the sewing. I'm not going to make you watch me. So I'll be right back. I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I will give you one of my pressing tips, something I learned actually from Garment Sewist. It is just magical for me. I learned where you just kind of spray it with your starch spray, which I do a mix. So this is 1/3 flatter, 1/3 best press, 1/3 water in just a mister bottle. And I love these misters. They're just a lovely fine mist. But I just spray that seam and then set it. You always want to set those threads. So regardless of whether you use a spray or not, I've always been taught that you want to kind of heat set those threads. They lay nice and flat before you go and press them. And then also, I say pressing's a personal preference. I originally was taught that you press one way. You always press to the dark side or whatever made the seams oppose when they were matched up together. But then, you know, within the last 5-10 years of sewing, pressing your seams open has become a thing. And I personally like it, but you get to do you. If you like pressing to one side, press to one side. How I like it is not like the absolute rule. So then I just press my seams open, just use my fingers kind of like a stiletto, make them nice and flat. Now, I am also a steam user. Not everybody is. So a lot of my tips are just how I like to do it. Please do it the way you want. So you press it open and then you just press it the opposite way. And for me, that just gets the flattest seam. So that way, press this way. And so then here's our 4-patch in progress. All you'll do, match them right sides together. I highly recommend pinning these seams where they meet. The plus side is if I had pressed them, you know, to one side instead of the other, they would kind of do what they call nesting. They would kind of lock up next to each other. But to me, that's lumpier than how it would normally be. If you're a new quilter, please match your end corners and pin them because you want your block to be square in the end. And if you don't make sure both these ends start and stop together, you'll get kind of a wave a lot of times in the middle where that center doesn't always meet. So just to make sure that it all stays square, I would recommend pinning both sides. And then you're just going to sew it and press it, and that's going to be the 4-patch. So I'll be right back. All right, video magic. So here's our 4-patch. This is kind of the main body of the bird. All right, set that aside, and then we're going to do flying geese. So this method I'm going to show you is what I would call the waist method. It's doing one flying geese at a time. If you want to know how to make them both at the same time, I highly recommend using the wing clipper. And I'm going to show you how I use this just for trimming the blocks in the end. But they definitely have a great set of instructions in their pattern. Love it. And I do have a video on the wing clipper on how to do all that. So feel free to go refer to that. But for this situation, I'm just going to do one at a time because a lot of these blocks only need 1 or 2. So kind of doing the no waste massive quantity doesn't always fit the project. So you just want to make sure your light fabrics have a diagonal line on the back of them. And you're just going to lay it so that it starts with the diagonal in the center and goes to one outside, and then you're going to sew on the line, directly on the line for this. All right, so we'll be right back. All right, so after you've done that, it's all sewn the one side. You're just going to do a quick little trim. We'll move it here. This 4 by 8.5 or 4.5 by 8.5, magical. I love Creative Grids. They have great rulers. What's nice is there is a dash line for 1/4 inch marking. So I'm going to lay that on the line I sewed so that I'm going to have my 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're just going to trim that excess off. And you can be one of those crazy people. You can sew these and trim these and other things. Have at it. Me, they go in the scrap bin. All right, and so we're going to press it, and then what we'll do is we'll apply the other side, essentially in the opposite direction. So always starting with this point up in the middle and coming to the outer side to make that flying goose. So I'll be right back. All right, so that's what we call flying geese. I'm going to use this wing clipper just to make sure that everything measures the way they should. And remember, all the measurements that you need for cutting and all those kinds of things are in the pattern that we release every week. So this block is released. You can go pick up the pattern in the store. That is the only way to get it. So until September, and then we'll sell it. And for anybody who's maybe catching up a little later. All right, so wing clipper, come over here. And what I love about this thing, we'll see if I can demonstrate kind of this way, is all its markings. So it has kind of the crosshairs of the top to make sure you have that 1/4 inch, and then your diagonal lines down the side for your flying geese. So you want to make sure it all fits inside the box. Whatever doesn't fit in the box needs to be trimmed. So this one's actually looking pretty good. It fits in the box. That's what we want. If it doesn't, then trim off any excess. If it's too small, your seam allowance is probably a little too big, and you want to do a little bit skinnier, or what they call a scant seam, on all your sewing. So, but you want to make sure it all measures the way it should, so your block comes out correctly in the end. All right. So then the next step is we're just going to lay the block out and sew it together. So we'll come back over here. Move all my stuff out of the way so you can see all the fun. All right. Keep in mind, if you're using different color fabrics, just kind of look at the layout. So for me, if you're doing my color layout, you want to make sure this yellowish kind of mustard color is up by what I would call the head. All right. So we're down to kind of 4 pieces and parts. We have our 4 patch, our geese, and this square. What will happen is this square is going to get sewn onto this side of this flying geese. This flying goose is going to get sewn onto the 4 patch. And once again, if you're a new quilter, please pin these corners. You want these corners to match up. All right, so you don't get any waffly. This shouldn't be a problem for you guys, but if you're worried that it's going to shift one way or the other, at least pin this end corner where you're going to stop sewing, and then start here and making sure that this corner lines up and this corner stays nice and lined up. Because once again, you just don't want any of that shifting while you're sewing, because that's where you get waviness, wonkiness, whatever you want to call it, lots of unhappiness. And then you're just going to go to the machine and do your 1/4 inch, and we'll come back and I'll show you how to put that last piece on. All right, so we're back to this guy. We have the flying geese sewn to the 4 patch, the square to this flying geese, and we're making sure that the yellow is near this again. We're going to flip. Okay, and we're going to make sure we pin, because we want to make sure that this seam intersection stays together, matches up nice and pretty. And then I'm going to pin this corner, because this is where I'm going to stop my sewing, and I want to make sure this corner stays right where it belongs. And then I'm going to match up this corner, and this is where I'm going to begin sewing. All right. So one last seam, we're almost there. All right, look at this guy. Look how spot on that join. So yours should look like this in whatever fabric color combination you've done, but it should look like a bird. Maybe it's flying down. I don't know, but I'm loving this block. It's super cute. You could do just this one block in a quilt and it looks completely different. So it's kind of fun, and hopefully it wasn't that hard for you guys. I know some people struggle with flying geese, so hopefully this worked for you. We've got our little 1/4 inch above our point, so we will not lose that point when we go and sew these blocks together. We measure it up, and it does measure its final 12.5. So all things are good. So if you have any problems, if you're struggling with anything, like I said, if those geese aren't working, points aren't coming together, it's not measuring the way it should, please reach out. You can email us at info@quiltingmayhem.com. You can come to the store. You can call us. You can message through Facebook and Instagram and you name it. At pretty much almost every social media, we're out there. So please ask for help. We're here for you. We want you to enjoy this, not just this block, but hopefully the whole sampler. Hopefully you stay along with us and do all the blocks and come out with a just fun quilt in the end. So that's week 1. We'll see you next week. Keep on stitching.